quickly what the difference is as one taking over from the other. And as a West Rural Council, I'm aware that we have, I thought, alcohol-free zones in West Derby. Are we talking about the same things?
Okay. Margaret, did you want to?
In effect, yes, the reason why the maps show the other areas, they were made alcohol-free zones under previous legislation. The legislation that came in 2007 is regulations that specifically refer to designated public places order, and if that they have the same effect, and they are commonly referred to as alcohol-free zones. It would be what members of the public would understand of what a designated public place order does. Is it in effect tries to ensure that people are not carrying open vessels with drinking in that particular area. I don't know if that assists.
I think it used to be an alcohol-free zone in West Kirby and the other areas around the world. They used to be alcohol-free zones. They are now designated public places. The West Kirby one, Nelswell Lake one, all designated public places order. The legislation is different, so the police powers are different in relation to that. We talk about designated public place orders. It's not the easiest thing to say. A DPPO is really much better, and in common parlance, we fall back into the situation of referring to as alcohol-free zones. Technically, legally, it's not correct. That's why we make the distinction. There was the powers are very different. Why I try to make the distinction, though, is because the powers for the police are very different in terms of it's not an offence to simply have a drink in a public place. The offence is created when the power is I can ask somebody to stop. The offence is when they refuse to do so. That is different from the alcohol-free zone legislation. And I think some members of the public might think it's perfectly reasonable anywhere for a police officer to go and say, please can you stop drinking? But actually, we can't. It's only with this practice. I think it's a bit of a wrong. It's a strange situation. Therefore, it's a situation I'm trying to do something about through this piece.
So what we're saying that the older ones now being upgraded to larger powers?
The old ones are already designated public places orders. So the current powers that I refer to exist in those areas. What I think different areas need to consider perhaps is are they fit for purpose in terms of the size. Now from an evidential point of view, from the statistics that I analyse, currently I would say by and large that they are. I would not be seeking the same power in relation to that area at the moment, because currently that area I would say is fit for purpose. But it has to be, you need to consider the evidence, and the evidence needs to be presented and established. If the evidence is there, then we can take those forward.
Chair, could I just say, I think that the Sergeant has made his case in terms of the area, the displacement effect, the caps and that sort of thing. The only other question, and I wasn't at the last committee when you went to the second stage of the area, so I don't know whether the question was asked then. We have under paragraph 7 the source implications. I'm just wondering, can we afford it in the current straitened financial times to put up all these signs, do whatever is necessary for the whole of the constituency?
Chair, obviously we have identified that there are cost implications in relation to, in the first instance, going out to consultation. What I have been seeking is the most cost-effective way in which that consultation can be undertaken. And currently I am exploring the possibility that in undertaking consultation with residents, that is done through a process that we will be doing in any case as a council. One option possibly is that later this year a mail shot does go to all residents in relation to refuse collection in the borough, and that I'm currently seeking that we actually, if you were mindful to go ahead with agreeing consultation, that we into that, so that the cost implication will then only relate to the paperwork as opposed to any postage costs. There is also a further possibility, although it is some months later, is through council tax requests. So should members be mindful to progress to consultation, it would be undertaken through the most economic means to do so, to minimise the costs. I don't know if Ms. Hapley's may want to also make some comment in relation to that. There is obviously signage costs as well. We are currently advised in relation to the new ferry signage that it's averaging approximately £20 per sign. But again, we would seek funding for that. There is no existing budget for such an order and for the implications for that, so we would be seeking funding outside of current budget, and I think maybe Ms. Sackers may want to comment on that.
Yesterday, I attended the alcohol strategy meeting, for which there is going to be a launch event here tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Forward to seeing you all there. And we discussed the matter of funding children. That's fine. Who else got something?
Oh, fine. Not heard anything about this. It's fine, you know.
Okay. I apologize. At that meeting, we discussed that should the committee decide to go ahead with the public consultation, the issues of funding was raised. There are a number of sources that are open to us. We would be seeking support from public health and other responsible authorities in relation to this. And indeed, the inspector here currently works with the Police and Crime Commission and potential about access to funding through the Police and Crime Commission for this. The other thing that I'd like the committee to consider is last Monday I attended an event which was a review of drug and alcohol service delivery, and there were some statistics that were presented that the economic costs to rural alcohol problems in terms of health, social costs, criminal justice and lost productivity is estimated at £127 million, of which £25 million are healthcare costs. And whilst we don't have an exact figure on what this will cost, it's a relatively small amount in comparison to what it will cost us if we don't do this.
Okay,
Thanks, Chair. Through you, Chair, just a couple of questions for the police, really. I note in 2.3 of the report they do produce some evidence, and I am largely supportive of what the Sergeant had to say there in his presentation. But it doesn't seem in 2.3 or throughout the report we have much to compare the offences committed in Birkenhead with other areas of Wirral or even other parts of the country. There's nothing to tell me whether that's particularly high or particularly low. And really following on from what Councillor Salter said, as a Wallasey Ward councillor, I was a bit perplexed as to why evidence of drinking and that sort of behaviour in Wallasey was perhaps not presented to us this evening. If we're looking at something which will have quite big cost implications for the council in terms of advertising and signage and whatever, should we not look to other areas and see whether this sort of policy can be implemented there in one fell swoop rather than an incremental approach, which seems to be what has happened in the past?
Thank you, Chair. The slide that I presented that had the alcohol-free zone and the red and the yellow marking, that was identifying that area as the worst in the world.
Why is that? I mean, is it in terms of numbers of offences? I mean, there's no.
Yeah.
You say it's the worst.
Yeah. In terms of number of alcohol-related incidents, that area is the worst in the world by a significant margin. Every month, we have the antisocial behaviour governance meeting, which takes place in the old court building in Wallasey. A presentation is produced there, presented to attending people where consideration. Back in 2007, it was under consideration to have a borough-wide designated public places order. The reason why it didn't happen at that time essentially came down to cost. It was costed then for the whole of the borough £27,000. We haven't really touched on or mentioned a figure of what we think this is, but if we took that figure as being the case and we said now we've got 4 parliamentary constituencies, we're looking at roughly a quarter of that for this particular area. But at the moment, the evidence doesn't exist in terms of alcohol-related antisocial behaviour or alcohol-related crime disorder to support this type of coverage in those other areas. Because in some of those other areas, there are already designated public places orders. So you have one in a small area of, you have one in Lisnard, there is one for Moore, there is one for West Kevin, there is one for Mills. We've seen the Prenton and the Upton one, and the New Ferry one as well. So there are a number of different ones in those different areas. The evidence that I'm presenting is this is the real hotspot, and this is where we need to concentrate at this particular moment in time. And forgive me, I haven't provided a comparison with other areas which are concentrated on.
Thanks, yeah, and thanks for that answer. It does go some way to reassure me, but I think it would be helpful if this is to come back to committee again at another stage, that you have those figures in terms of percentages as to how this is the hotspot in the room compared to other areas, and maybe mention of those figures with other authorities as well. I mean, on the whole, I am supportive of this, but I do sort of not have trouble with the argument that this incremental approach will be more cost effective than the approach we had presented to us in 2007. I vaguely remember I was a newly elected councillor then, and I was actually on this committee, and I think I did sit when this matter was discussed on this committee, a Wirral-wide DPPO. And if we have the evidence then presented to us for a Wirral-wide DPPO, why is it that we don't have that evidence now? Why is it that it's not appropriate for this money? Is it again because of cost, or is it because there are less incidents in other parts of the Wirral? And if that is the case, then we need to have evidence to show that there has been a reduction in those parts of the Wirral. We don't any longer need that.
Yes, Chair. If I may assist, there is guidance issued by the Home Office in relation to designated public places order, and in making reference to that guidance, what it actually says in relation to borough-wide designations is that whilst it's not specifically prohibited in the legislation, we would advise caution. As in order for a designated public places order to be proportionate, you need to ensure that there is evidence of alcohol-related antisocial behaviour in each and every part of the borough. And it says obviously the authority would need to satisfy themselves that in each and every part of the borough there was alcohol-related antisocial behaviour. I think it would be very sad to think that that was the case in Wirral, in terms of every part of the borough. It is about evidence-based, and that's what the police are focused on for this particular approach to you tonight.
Finally, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to labour the point somewhat, but I mean, I'm being told it was down to cost, now I'm being told it was down to a lack of evidence. Which was it in 2007?
Chair, I said in context of 2007, it certainly wasn't something that came through my responsibility, and a report did come and was presented by one of the borough solicitors in relation to that. Whether or not that particular report had reference to the guidance at the time in relation to evidence, I can't answer to the background in 2007. It wasn't sent into my remit at that time. What we are acting on now is, as I say, the Home Office guidance, and also the regulations which do relate to alcohol-related antisocial behaviour. I think Sergeant Barrett just to add something.
2007, in that, well, in terms of the research that I've done, it was my understanding that it was largely finance was an issue. In relation to the guidance, I'm just trying to date on this. If I remember correctly, this particular guidance that we're referring to was produced after 2007, when the legislation changed. Clearly there had been a development issue. I think areas looked at blanket coverage, and I think the guidance in relation to blanket coverage came in after people had tried that and found that there's been issues with that. Ultimately, it has to be about evidence. I would always be disappointed if there was evidence to support something, and the only reason not to do something was finance, because finance, while significant, should never be a deal breaker. Because personally, I would always look to explore whatever opportunity there was there, because actually what he wanted to do was the right thing to do. But yeah, this guidance in relation to the blanket coverage came out after the attempts were made. Certainly for a little while.
Thanks, Chair. As one who was born in Birkenhead, and as a councillor for the ward in Birkenhead, this whole situation makes me feel very sad, really, quite depressed. It's unfortunate that we have to make such orders, but I do recognise the problems that the police have and that we all have. People using alcohol and how very intimidating people are when they're drinking outside and people are just going about their everyday lives. I'm not a person that likes to bring in controls and prohibition and all this sort of thing, but we have to accept the inevitable and realise that something really has got to be done about this situation. I was on licensing committee a few weeks ago, and I had a situation in Oxton Road and Misery and Borough Road, and Misery was being caused to people in that area. So it'd be very interesting to see the results of the consultation, and I was certainly supporting the consultation going ahead.
I just, thanks, Councillor Williamson. As a hardened pedestrian, because I don't drive, I'm less than 10 minutes away from Oxford Road. I mean, most days, unless I've got meetings and board, but I have seen it firsthand. I've seen it at 9 o'clock in the morning. I've seen them by the casino, the entrance by the Greek restaurant on Borough Road, where people are taking the kids to school. I've seen them there. I've seen Oxford Road. If you ever go to Oxford Road, how it's deteriorated. I think that you see the influx of these convenience stores, alcohol. They know that they are on a winner. The people around there, the street drinkers, that's where they're buying it from. You see the pyramids where they put the security on, the mallets are taken out, and they went down the market area on the seats there, and now I think that they're starting to go down the back of Wilkinson's around that area. I see them on a daily basis. I can only support the police on this because it's there. There's been resident meetings with the local councillors, and we had a meeting with even Bargain Booze, and they pointed out that some of the beer they're drinking, they can't even buy it. That price. So, Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, I mean, given the various comments
Can I just say though, if you have a proposal, let's stick to what's on the agenda tonight. Okay, let's stick to, and that's we brought about the party being fairly. We've got this in front of us. Police have brought it, the officers have brought it. Okay.
Chair, I think it will all become about evidence, and I've been proposing, because I'm not proposing an extension to the proposed area, if I can use that terminology. But I would propose that the licensing authority go out to consultation on the proposed DPPO, and that the consultation be undertaken in an economically efficient way, and if, however, the cost is prohibitive, then this will be reported back to members.
Okay. Second, yeah?
I'll second that.
Okay. Do you want to comment on that, Madam?
Chair, if I just may, it's just to be the council going out to consultation. as opposed to the licensing authority.
One show of hands. Another agreed or?
That kind of clarify that then results in a consultation.
They have to come back.
Does everyone understand that? It's got to come back to us now. Okay, is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Next item, please make me interested in that next item, actually. Marvellous.
Chair, the purpose of this report is to advise members of additional powers and responsibilities imposed on local authorities as a consequence of the implementation of the Scrap Metal Dealers Act 2013. This legislation replaces the previous registration system for scrap metal dealers that was under the old legislation, and creates a whole new licensing regime for scrap metal dealers and motor salvage operators. The new regime commenced yesterday, and there is a transitional period for those scrap metal dealers who are currently registered with the local authority. So from the 1st of October up until the 15th of October, anyone who is currently registered can apply for a scrap metal licence. And there are two types of licences specified in the legislation. One is a site licence, and that all sites where a licensee carries on a business as a scrap metal dealer must be identified, and a site manager also has to be named for each site. This licence would allow a licensee to transport scrap metal to and from the sites and from any local area. There is a separate licence, which is a collector's licence, and this would allow someone to operate as a collector in the area. And it doesn't allow the collector to operate in any other local authority area. It would only be within the area that they are actually licensed. Also, you can't have both licenses. You can either have a collector's license or you can have a site license. You can't have both in the one authority. As I said, there is transitional arrangements in place, and what we have done to try and assist scrap metal dealers is we did deliver application forms to those who are registered with us yesterday. It could have been confusing to have given them earlier than yesterday because we may have received applications prior to the 1st of October, so we can't actually accept applications until it was yesterday. We can receive those applications now. However, there is some further work that does need to be done through interrogation of the legislation, which I understand was subject initially of a private member's bill. We have identified and been advised through our solicitor that the functions that are given under this legislation are what are deemed to be executive functions. And because of that, the delegation of those functions cannot be undertaken by this committee. It was intended originally that that would have been the case, and because of that, a separate report is now being presented to Cabinet, and it is within their remit to determine the fees that we charge for this licensing regime, and also to delegate the functions. With regard to the functions, there are, as I say, increased powers given to us as a local authority, which allow us to inspect and check for compliance with scrap metal dealers and collectors. And there are various requirements that they must undertake. For example, they must record the identity of people from whom they are actually taking the scrap metal. Introduced earlier this year, and that will continue, is that they can no longer give cash for scrap metal that they do receive. So it is more a regime that actually controls scrap metal dealers. It gives us the power, and also most our police, to have the power to enter such premises. And as I say, we are now currently going into the transitional period. We have, as I say, notified scrap metal dealers, and it's also I am undertaking a seminar to enable scrap metal dealers to have further information on 14th of October to assist them to comply with the new legislation. Just probably what would interest you as members in terms of what the requirements are to get a licence is that we need to be satisfied that they are suitable people to hold a licence. It's an interesting transgression from more recent legislation which has moved away from suitability of individuals in terms of holding a licence to sell alcohol. In this licensing regime, anybody who is applying for a licence will have to submit a disclosure of any convictions that they may have. And if it is deemed that they have relevant convictions, we may consider refusing that application. We're currently proposing within the Speaker delegation that if somebody wishes to make a written representation on that an officer can determine that particular application. However, as required by the legislation, if somebody wishes to make an oral representation in relation to a proposed refusal of such a licence, that they do so before the executive member responsible for the environment and sustainability. So this is all in line with the fact that it's come down to executive functions. No.
Often there's a change in work policy in relation to the interpretation of
And just to add on to that, anyone involved really in the application, for example, if it's a company that are applying for the licence, any of the company directors or shadow directors